Hey guys, welcome back to more HOA stories. In this video, a homeowner association fined me a ridiculous $500 per day because I had the audacity to put a fence around my property to stop them from trespassing. Let's dive right into the video to find out what happened. And our title story starts like this. This is coming from someone who was never a part of an HOA, so I might get some stuff wrong about how they operate. Still, just from what happened between my local HOA and me, I don't think I ever want to get involved in one. So this was about 3 years ago when I moved right outside a little suburb that was owned by an HOA. I had done my research beforehand and knew that I did not want to get involved in one, so I looked for a place that was just outside the jurisdiction. The house I moved into was close to the neighborhood, but also had a large amount of land in the backyard that was bordered by a public walking path. I loved just the sheer amount of space I had and I couldn't wait to develop it. I am an avid gardener, so I had plans to make a good chunk of the space a veggie garden. With the walking path so close to my property, I figured that there were people who would just walk around or through my yard. Since I had plans for what I wanted to do with it and didn't want dog walkers to make a mess or have bike treads on my grass, I got a surveyor to double-check the property boundaries and had a fence built along the edge of the path, but not on the path. That is an important distinction that will come up later. There was still a good 6 feet between the fence and the path, so it was not like the fence was right up against it. Enough space for people to move out of the way if it was a busy day for walkers and joggers. The company I went with got the fence up within a few days. It looked nice and, again, it was not blocking the walking path in any way. A few people even came up to me when they saw me outside and apologized since they thought that my yard was actually a part of the trail. I wanna say it was a week after the fence went up that I got a letter from the nearby HOA claiming that I had unlawfully put up a fence that violated their access to easement for my part of the neighborhood. I thought it was just a misunderstanding because number 1, I was not a part of the HOA, and number 2, the fence had been properly constructed after a surveyor came out to check the land, and number 3, my house and yard were not even close to the HOA's property line, so I did not understand what they thought they could cut through my yard to do. I naively thought that they addressed the letter to the wrong property actually, so I sent it back with a note letting them know that the address they had was incorrect. There was a notice on my door the next day along with a new letter. The letter claimed that I was very rude to have sent their letter back and that they did have the correct address. The notice gave me 30 days to tear down my fence and provide proof of its destruction before I would be fined for breaking a property ordinance the HOA had in place. I really did not understand what I'd done wrong. I wrote back to them letting them know that my yard was not near anything that they would have to walk through to access. The next day was a weekend, so I was able to catch the person who was gonna put up a new notice up on my door. The man, who I will call Reggie, was a member of the HOA board and told me that I was wrong and that my property was actually a part of the HOA. The easement that the HOA wanted my property for was the walking path, since it was quicker for some of the residents to cut through my yard. I told him about the survey that I had done to make sure my fence was not on someone else's property or obstructed the walking path, and he claimed that the surveyor I hired was actually wrong. It felt like a one-sided argument that I couldn't get a word in to defend myself, so I just stopped arguing and let Reggie hand me my notice. The notice provided the specific ordinance that I'd broken, which described my yard as being a footpath for the residents of the HOA, which did not make sense at all. I knew I had to do something, but I did not know where to turn first. I brought the surveyor back and had him provide me with all of the documentation from before the fence went up. I also got him to provide documentation about my property not being in the HOA's jurisdiction. I made a copy of everything and sent it to the HOA via mail, not wanting having to deal with Reggie face to face if I didn't have to. I actually thought that the proof was enough since there were 2 days when I didn't receive any correspondence from the HOA about my fence. Then I got another letter, printed on pink paper, advising me that I was now being fined for each day that the fence did not come down. Then the next day I got another letter, and the day after that, and the day after that, the letters kept coming, tallying up the fine that the HOA was threatening me with. They were fining me over $500 a day for obstruction of public pathways. Still citing the same ordinance that claimed my yard was part of the pathway to the walking path, I decided I would go the legal route now that I had proof that the HOA ignored what I sent them. And I, in turn, ignored the letters and notices that were posted on my door, but I kept them filed away while I searched for a lawyer that would take my case. It took some explaining to a few lawyers before I found one willing to take me. The ones I contacted were under the impression that I was actually a part of the HOA and claimed they could not help me since the HOA had jurisdiction due to any contracts I signed with them, which I tried to explain that I didn't, but at that point, most lawyers were not answering my messages after they told me no. The one I did find and was able to explain the full situation to asked for all of the documents I received from the HOA regarding my violations. I also provided her with the documents I got from the surveyor. A few days passed and I still kept getting more notices and letters from the HOA. Reggie even visited my house a few times, telling me that I was just making it worse for myself with all of this, and he threatened to go to the police if I didn't comply. I told him that he and the HOA board would be hearing from a lawyer, regardless of whether or not he went to the authorities. The next day, my lawyer told me that I could file a cease and desist against the HOA on the grounds of harassment. Since I never filled out a contract with them and my property was not a part of their jurisdiction, she could also demand compensation for my time and my peace of mind that was disturbed because of their actions. I told her to go through with it, and she provided me with a copy of everything, including a court date that a member of the HOA board would need to appear at in a few months' time if they refused the cease and desist. There was a letter from my lawyer 2 days later with a check from the HOA board for the amount my lawyer asked for, a note of apology from the HOA board, and a request to have the court date cancelled. Since they complied with my lawyer's request. My lawyer asked if I was satisfied, and I told her I was glad to have the situation behind me. With worries about letters and harassing visits gone, I finally started to work on my garden. I had a few people stop by on the other side of the fence to say hello and welcome me to the neighborhood. A few of them were from the nearby HOA and some of them were on the HOA board, and they came up to apologize about what happened. Apparently, this was not the first time members of the HOA board tried to find people that were not even part of their jurisdiction. The cease and desist made it clear that there were a few people on the board that were taking these situations too far, and the HOA dropped them as soon as they got the letter from my lawyer. The rest of the neighborhood heard about the situation too. Gossip travels fast in that neighborhood. And there has actually been a call to rework the entire HOA so that situations like mine don't happen again. And yeah guys, let's hope in the future OP will live in a more peaceful neighborhood. The next one is an absolutely amazing David vs. Goliath HOA story, and it is titled, "Am I the a-hole for leading a neighborhood rebellion against our HOA after they shut down all our community amenities?" And you don't want to miss this one, let me tell you. So, my wife, 39 female, and I moved into what we thought was the perfect family-friendly townhouse community about 7 years ago. We have 2 kids, 13 male and 10 female, who were the main reason that we chose this place. It had everything a family could want: a huge baseball field with proper fences and backstop, a well-maintained playground, tennis courts, and a community pool. The HOA fees were steep, $350 per month, but we figured it was worth it for all these amenities that our kids used almost daily. For the first 5 years, everything was great. The community was always buzzing with activity. On weekends, you would see dozens of kids playing baseball, soccer, or just running around on the field. The tennis courts were regularly used by families and the local tennis enthusiasts. The playground was always filled with younger kids and parents chatting while supervising. It was exactly the community feel we were looking for when we bought the place. Then, about 2 years ago, things started to change. The HOA board, which had been run by a mix of residents, had an election. Most of us busy parents did not pay much attention to it, which was a big mistake. A group of 5 older residents, all in their 60s and 70s with no children at home, managed to get themselves elected by rallying other retirees in the community to vote. Their campaign promised fiscal responsibility and preserving property values, which sounded reasonable enough. And I don't know why, but I was just thinking of the Umbrella Corporation for Resident Evil that is like slowly rising up in Raccoon City, but maybe that was just me. The first few months were not too bad. They repainted some common areas and fixed up the entrance sign, small improvements that everyone appreciated, but then they started talking about liability concerns at their monthly meetings. I did not attend those meetings initially, another mistake, but I started hearing rumblings from neighbors that the new board was considering restrictions on the community amenities. One Tuesday morning, I woke up to take my kid to school, and when we drove past the baseball field, there were suddenly signs plastered all over the fence. "Field closed. Don't enter. Violators will be reported to authorities." My son immediately asked, "Dad, why is the field closed?" "We have practice there tomorrow." "I don't know, buddy," I told him. "I will find out." I dropped the kids off and immediately called the HOA management company. After being on hold for 20 minutes, I finally got through to someone. "Good morning, I'm calling about the baseball field being closed. There are signs up, but there was no notice sent to residents." "Yes, the board voted last night to close the field due to insurance liability concerns," the woman said in a bored tone. "What? That's ridiculous. The field has been there for decades. What changed with the insurance?" "Sir, I just managed the calls. You will need to attend the next board meeting if you have concerns." "When is that?" "Next month, 3rd Tuesday, 1 p.m. 1 p.m? Most of us work during the day. Why is it scheduled then?" "Well, that is when the board members are available. Is there anything else I can help you with today?" I was fuming but tried to remain calm. "Can I at least get a copy of the minutes from the meeting where this was decided?" "Those will be posted on the community website within 30 days as required by the bylaws." That evening, I noticed my neighbor's kid walking across the field as a shortcut to get home, something all the kids in the neighborhood had done for years. Within minutes, a security car pulled up and a guard got out to speak to the kid. I could not hear what was said, but the kid looked scared and ran the rest of the way home. I walked over to my neighbor's house to check what happened. "Hey, I saw your son getting stopped by security on the field. What was that about?" My neighbor looked angry. "They told him if he walks on the field again, they will call the cops for trespassing. On a field we all pay HOA fees to maintain." Can you believe that? The next day, my wife and I decided to use the tennis courts, thinking at least those were still open. We played for about 20 minutes when the same security guard approached us. "Excuse me, do you have a reservation for this court?" he asked. "A reservation? We never needed a reservation before," my wife replied. "New policy. All court user must be pre-approved by the Recreation Committee. I'm going to have to ask you to leave." I tried to reason with him. "We have lived here for years and never needed a reservation. We pay $350 a month in HOA fees to use these amenities." And by the way, guys, $350 in HOA monthly fees just sound diabolical. But maybe that's normal, I have no idea. Anyway, "I don't make the rules, sir. I just enforce them. Please exit the courts." Reluctantly, we left. That night, I posted on our neighborhood Facebook group about what happened, and the comments exploded. Dozens of families had similar experiences in just the past 24 hours. Kids being threatened with police calls for playing, residents being kicked out of facilities they used for years. The next morning we discovered the tennis courts had been padlocked with a combination lock. I called the HOA again. "I need the combination for the tennis courts," I said. "Are you certified to use the courts?" the woman asked. "Certified? What are you talking about?" "The board has implemented a new tennis certification program. You need to demonstrate proficiency and knowledge of proper court etiquette before being issued the code." That is absurd. I've been playing tennis for 20 years. "Well, you will need to provide proof of that and fill out the certification application. There's a $50 processing fee." $50? On top of our $350 monthly fees? "The certification program is an additional service." I hung up and immediately started texting neighbors. And by the way, guys, is this a mafia or an HOA? I'm pretty sure the mafia would take less money from you per month. By that evening, I had a group of about 15 other parents equally outraged by these sudden changes. We agreed to meet at my house to discuss what to do. During our meeting, we discovered something interesting. One of the neighbors worked at a law firm and had reviewed our HOA bylaws. "They cannot do this," she said. "The bylaws specifically state that any change to community amenity access requires a community-wide vote, not just a board vote." "So they are breaking their own rules?" I asked. "Absolutely, and there's more. The meetings have to be held at a time when most residents can reasonably attend. A weekday at 1 p.m. clearly does not qualify." Armed with this information, we drafted a formal letter citing the relevant bylaw sections and demanding the immediate reopening of all facilities. 28 households signed it. I hand-delivered it to the HOA office the next day. The response came quickly. The board president called me personally. "We received your letter," she said coldly. "While we appreciate your concern, the board is acting within its authority to protect the community from liability. Several children have been injured on the field in recent years." "That is not true," I said. "There have not been any serious injuries, and even if there were, that is what insurance is for. Our insurance premiums were set to increase due to the risk. By how much? That is confidential board information. As homeowners who pay the insurance through our HOA fees, we have a right to know. You can submit a formal request for that information, which the board will consider at the next meeting." Which is conveniently scheduled when most working families cannot attend, right? "If you have an issue with the timing, you're welcome to submit a request to change it." It was like talking to a brick wall. After hanging up, I called an emergency meeting with our growing group of concerned residents. By now, we had over 50 households involved, most of them families with children. They were stonewalling us. I told the group, "We need to escalate this." We decided on a three-pronged approach. Number 1, submit formal requests for all financial records related to insurance and the decision to close amenities. Number 2, review the HOA election procedures to see if we could force a recall election. And number 3, organize a protest at the next board meeting. For the next meeting, we all took time off work. Instead of the usual 5 or 6 attendees, over 70 residents showed up. The board members looked shocked when they walked in. "We will need to move to a larger venue," the president said nervously. "No," I responded. "This is the scheduled meeting location. If you didn't plan for adequate space, that's not our problem." And yes, the meeting was tense from the start. When we got to the open comments section, one parent after another stood up to express their frustration. "My children have nowhere to play now," one mother said. "We specifically bought in this community for the amenities that you have now taken away without proper procedure." "I work from home," another resident added, "and the value of my property just dropped significantly when you removed access to facilities prominently featured in all real estate listings." The HOA board mostly sat in stony silence. When the president finally responded, her answer was infuriating. "We understand your concerns, but the board has a fiduciary duty to protect the association's interests. These changes were necessary." "Show us the numbers," I demanded. "Show us the insurance quotes, the risk assessments, the legal opinions you supposedly based these decisions on." "That information is proprietary." "No, it belongs to the homeowners, all of us. We pay for it." The meeting ended with no resolution. As we were leaving, one of the board members, who seemed uncomfortable with the whole situation, approached me quietly. "Look, I didn't agree with all these changes," she whispered. "But the president and treasurer pushed it through. They live on the other side of the community, away from the field, and complain constantly about the noise from children playing." "So this is not about insurance at all?" I asked. "Not entirely. They've been looking for reasons to restrict access for months. The kids playing soccer near their homes was driving them crazy." This information changed everything for me. At our next strategy meeting, we decided it was time to go nuclear. Our neighbor, who worked at the law firm, helped us draft a formal legal complaint, citing multiple violations of the HOA bylaws. We also discovered that state law required HOAs to maintain financial transparency with all members. We submitted the complaint and a detailed request for all financial records. When they stalled, we had our lawyer friend send a more threatening letter on her firm's letterhead. Suddenly, the board was more cooperative. They released the financial records, which showed no significant insurance issues. Just as we suspected, the whole liability claim was a fabrication. Armed with this evidence, we called for a special election under a bylaw provision that allowed for it if 30% of homeowners petitioned. We got signatures from over 45% of the community. The board tried every trick to delay or complicate the election, but we countered each move. We organized a full campaign, going door to door to explain to every resident what had happened. The election day finally came, and the turnout was the highest in community history. The results were not even close. All 5 board members were voted out, replaced by a diverse group that included 3 parents of young children, a retired teacher who supported community access, and a property management professional. The first act of the new board was to reopen all facilities immediately. They also implemented new bylaws requiring that any significant changes to amenity access must be approved by a community-wide vote, not just the board. and they changed the meeting times to evenings to ensure working residents could attend too. The former board president was furious. She confronted me in the grocery store a week later. "You've ruined everything," she hissed. "Do you have any idea how much noise we had to deal with? Children screaming all day long, teenagers playing music, balls hitting fences. It was unbearable." "Then maybe you should not have moved into a family-friendly community," I replied. "Those amenities were why most of us bought here." "Well, we will see how you feel when your property values drop because this place looks like a playground instead of a respectable adult community." I just smiled and said, "Actually, our realtor told me values are already up since the amenities reopened. Turns out families will pay a premium for communities that actually let their kids use the facilities." It's been 6 months since the new board took over. The field is filled with kids again. The tennis courts are busy but accessible to all. The playground has new equipment and they've even added a community garden area. The best part though, our HOA fees actually went down by $25 a month because the new board found the old one had been wasting money on unnecessary security patrols and overpriced landscaping contracts from companies owned by their friends. So Reddit, am I the a-hole for leading what amounted to a rebellion against our HOA and getting the entire board replaced just because they closed some amenities? My wife thinks I went overboard and created unnecessary neighborhood tension, but I think standing up for our community was the right thing to do. Edit, yes, the old board members still live in the community, they mostly keep to themselves now. Comment number 1, not the a-hole. As someone who's dealt with similar HOA nightmares, sometimes you have to organize and fight back. They were clearly violating the bylaws and they knew it. And yeah guys, let me know in the comments what you think about this. Do you think OP was the a-hole here, or would you have done the same if you were in OP's shoes? Comment number 2, as an older resident without kids, I'm still voting anti-A. I myself moved to a family community because I like the energy and life. Those board members could have moved to an age-restricted community if they wanted peace and quiet. Comment number 3, everyone sucks here and I'm gonna get downvoted to hell for this. Yes, the HOA board were power-tripping jerks who abused their position, but let's be honest about the family-friendly BS. Your precious little angels were probably screaming their heads off at 7 AM on weekends, leaving trash everywhere and destroying the facilities while their parents scrolled on phones. I've lived in these so-called family communities and they are usually disaster zones. The board went about it all wrong, but I guarantee those kids were being absolute monsters with zero supervision. Maybe instead of starting a revolution, you could have taught your kids some damn manners and basic respect for shared spaces. Both sides in this petty suburban war sound completely exhausting. And before we end the video, we will read one last story from r/pettyrevenge that you don't want to miss. It is titled, "You Should Smile More." So I was out running errands, lost in thought, just trying to get through the day. As I walked past a man, he looked at me and said, "You should smile more, it would look much better on you." With a stupid smile on his face, like he was giving me genuine advice. I stopped, turned to him and said, "I just got back from identifying my sister's body. She was murdered last night." His face went pale, his mouth opened and then closed like he was searching for words, but nothing came out. He just nodded awkwardly and practically ran away. I don't actually have a sister, but the entitlement some people have to dictate a stranger's emotions is just infuriating. You have no idea what someone else is dealing with, and assuming that they owe you a smile is just ignorant and selfish. Maybe next time he will think twice before telling someone how they should feel. And yeah guys, I would 100% agree with that, and thank you so much for watching. I will see you again tomorrow.